Spirituality in School. Dedicated. The All Children. Jos Cruz. Author's note. One day I was invited to give a talk about spirituality in a school. Before I accepted this generous offer, as always with an open heart, and totally free of charge as always, I returned to school, not as a student I was, but to explain some of my experienced knowledge that developed over several reincarnations, and now I bring this last bare life. I felt that most of the students were very spiritual, but did not identify them as such. Some felt but did not know how to set these feelings, and what they could bring benefit to their still young lives. Others questioned me why they did this or that and what the relationship to spirituality. I also noticed that the level of teachers, they too kept in ignorance about any part of this ancient science that has existed since the beginning of mankind. Some of these teachers who felt more spirituality, trying somehow to pass some of these reciprocal knowledge to students, but more particularly, only between classes, due to not having had a basic education about this science, and be used only to teach other subjects required by the imposition of the society. It is through them that we're formed. Faced with such an invitation, put myself available to answer your questions in most of them. Their parents and teachers, or had difficulty answering the topic or did not tell them anything, taking children to get adults to look perplexed, which are questioned about themselves and those adults. If they are already great and know so much, why I do not know how to respond or take my doubts. For this talk is not only the classroom, or only in the ears and hearts of those who attended. I decided to transpose such questions as the answers, developing a more spiritual heart of the book, like so many others who have written in good faith and truthfully, through my spirit shining as always in times of no mind, joining always the creative, which in most cases and nothing can also be felt by those who read them, equally. What often have such knowledge in the form of parables, for it is through this way that any human spirit imparts its knowledge. Not by words or something kid, but general directions of contexts, which then must be meticulously cut short, for many people in general, to minimally understand some meanings, for later lead them to feel something more superior, in their deepest intimacy. For in that way can interpret, accept them, develops them and live them, heart humbly open to these things of the sacred, which strongly outweigh any respect for the human mind is rationally designed to achieve. Thanked. Introduction. When I entered the classroom, one of the teachers present said to the boys who attended the 4th class in primary school at the end of the school year, "Boys and girls, this year that I have been with you, I have taken into account all matters that have taught so that they are recorded within you. When going to the preparatory cycle you are able to move forward in your future studies as made so far. You all know that whenever I can to teach you what I know, but over the years heard many things that you have asked me, the different materials that we give. That is related to spirituality, a matter which I also never learned when I became a teacher. So congratulations are in today. It will be a different class from all others that I had given to all of you to put all the issues related to the topic they wish. So today we have our guest here as an author and writer of several books about the spiritual science." "Then say good morning to our guest," exclaimed the teacher. So everyone tune in. Chorus means, if they heard the angels fall from heaven said good day. Lesson first, the colors inside the head. "Hello everyone," said the author, in low tone with a slight smile and bright eyes. After several seconds of silence to view all small said, "It seems that today I went back to school again, not as a student I've ever been as you, but as a being of light in human form, not to teach you anything but to give you all know who you are." The teacher who truly heard everything from raised eyebrows and shaking hands with the long hair that had blocked the vision of one eye. The author continued, "Well, we do so, not to mention all at once. When any of you have any questions to put your finger in the air, and that order will put your questions." "Okay?" asked the author, and all confirmed that nodded. Another thing the author said, Although you do not know your names, you know everyone, so you will not treat the names that sign in your work. Only there will be only fingers and nothing else. Agree? The affirmative agreed that all over again with his head. Excellent, commented the author. Come then begin, and already most of the guys had his finger in the air. Is there already so many? Well, after all, who will be the first to ask the first question? Immediately responded with a girl, the finger in the air, looking older due to their physical completeness that left much to be desired for some women. Yes, replied the author, flexing his head slightly forward without looking at her, talking in the middle of the eyes. Finger said then, the Lord tells me why when in the evening, go to sleep and close my eyes, I see colors in my head. The author, after listening to it carefully, raised his eyes to the whole class. And he said, as you do not treat you for your name, you also do not treat me by the Lord. Although it is older than you, I feel equal to you. So treat me or call me as I give way more and feel comfortable with you, or just treat me by my name. Okay. They felt comfortable with such, confused by the author, being on a par with an adult, what was not usual in the classroom. But they agreed. Let's go and meet the girl. Well, the fact that when you close your eyes day or night or even during the day, beyond the things that normally you see, the colors are also there. All these colors come from the universe. That is all that you see, the rainbow that you can make up in heaven. When you see these colors in the form of light reaching the earth, they hit you as well. When you reach through a gland that is located at the top of the head of pituitary name, it receives the light from the sky and turn or the guard on the inside of your body, specifically in the cells, as energy, to open their eyes when that same light is projected through them to the outside, which in turn to reach any object. This light on contact with the most dense that light is made the object, by shocking with the object, creates a vibration, which in turn returns to your eyes after coming to your brain, where it is replaced by the perception of the object seen, identifying the next. And during the day gather light, it comes out, and sometimes you see bright particles, for example against the sun or where there is much clarity. These bright particles, when they unite in large quantities, can turn into clouds. These clouds turn back to the brain. They are retained. These same clouds during the day, when they study hard and also play with, they are transformed into energy to give you strength and make all your stuff. If you do not hard enough physically or mentally, that energy is retained in your body to the night. So when you close your eyes, or even with your eyes open in the darkness of your room, and then envision these colors, that may be in the form of clouds like those you see in heaven. If darker means you longer than you ought to do exercises, mental stilts or not, you think they're quite well about certain things, and you spend more energy than you should. But if clouds or waving colors, which can also be fixed, like a big sky clear of any color, or rays of light, or in the form of stars, there are more than the clouds blown away by turning your body into small pieces again. Got it? Asked the author. What the girl said yes. Lesson second: Ghosts. Many fingers have already downloaded, others were still in the air, with their tips pointing toward the ceiling, and the arm being held by the other not to fall down. Who's next? Asked the author. Now I'm a boy answered, in a portfolio further away from the window where it was pasted a drawing done in pencil color, with 2 trees on either side, a house that stood in the middle, and which had a fireplace to smoke black. Below passed a small stream, in which there was a small bridge which described the 2 sides. And there high up in the sun shone painted light colors that stand out where its rays. And right in the center a stronger yellow, in which 2 points via shaped eyes, with a few lashes to the center, a large nose that more resembled a withered carrot, which ended with the middle next to circulate mollusk-shaped smile mock. The author returned to tilt the head slightly forward so as a sign that the child could expose your question. You know, often when I lie down I find myself surrounded by figures like ghosts, so I cover my head and they disappear, but I'm afraid. I have told my parents, But they tell me I'm so tired that his head makes me see these things. Why is this happening to me? The author looked into his eyes as reading your soul. And with a smile that exuded from her face her figure answered. These include that you see the ghost flames. There are more than you have visions of other beings of light that have departed this life to another. In another life, the boy asked, perplexed. Yes, these figures have lived their lives on Earth to evolve, and then when the time comes to leave for some other life that we call the astral. But those people, as not having lived on Earth, evolved enough as beings of light, so they can leave in complete peace with themselves, at the time they leave the physical body to join the soul in the astral plane, did not have the necessary light to ascend or go up to that higher plane that exists in the cosmos. Since they have the necessary light, and light, as you should have learned, is equal to energy. These light beings are weak and faint, hovering, lean back and sit up or lie down with the people who are alive. Why this happens? Because these beings need the brightest light and clear that surrounds you, and you can continue to remain as still beings of light. But the negative feature when you feel fear, but that's the way they have to feed of your physical energy cosmic. Because these forms of energy, when the negative in vision, make you feel afraid. The fear is part of a vibration that goes through your mind and your entire body, thus generating an enormous intensity of negative energy, which in turn leaves your physical body, through the many centers that have energy distributed by your body. These negative beings will feed this negative energy to keep that picture you see. You got to follow what I said. The author asked while looking at the rest of the guys who followed carefully what he said. Spirituality in school. So far yes, but I still have something you wanted to know. The author did mention it to continue. So why do the ghosts disappear when I cover my head? Well, said the author. Because you covered the head due to the fear you feel, you defend this attitude naturally without knowledge, because so did thy spirit, not to run each time this happens to you more afraid. At that time your spirit sends a message to your mind, for her to stop being afraid. And when the mind receives this message, your hands instinctively cover your head with the blanket. By making this document to your mind for must and almost stop generates a new power pole and positive color, going immediately stop making negative energy. After this happens with these figures, do not take more energy to power you. They disappear completely, and then you can sleep peacefully. Now I'll give you a hint. When you return to these ghosts appear, you will never be afraid or scared at all. Because these beings, to stand in the way they present themselves, are made of weaker energy than those owned. So you can never do any harm. Simply you just ignore them and not are afraid. Because fear is generated only in the mind, the negative vibrations that make you feel otherwise may never happen. Because by the time they feel, they lose the fear of letting go and go looking for another person for you to generate fear. All felt what he said. A new silence came over the classroom. Spirituality in school. Lesson 3: The vibration of the words. In one corner stood a boy with the eyes half closed, with his hands supporting his head, half lying on the desk. It appeared that the night was not your friend. The author led him to speak softly, breaking the silence that was felt. So you're sleeping or heard differently from your colleagues. The boy got up very quietly your head and said, I was not sleeping or something, and thus feel better what it says. The author replied to him. And he asked him, you know why? He said, the boy. Because the words that they issue energy in vibration state, which in turn, while not here with your ears, you can feel the vibration through which they contain. That on reaching the top of your portfolio where you had your hands resting, they in turn feel that energy, and pass directly to your pituitary gland that have the top of the head, then turns her into a more subtle energy that we can also call it thinner. That then goes to your brain that identifies it as if it had come by your ears naturally, seeing and keeping what he said. Your colleague just gives you a good example of how one can and should learn in a certain areas that are given verbally, not requiring the application of vision. Because to do is spend a great amount of energy we have in our bodies. So if you close your eyes and remain alert to what your teachers say, so focusing only on what they hear, learn faster and never forget. Because they are learning through sounds, and your spirits understand us, and what we still do not think it will keep forever in the drawer of thy soul. Lesson 4: The silence of mind. A new finger was already taught in the air. It was a girl in blue dress. His cheeks were rosy from having been so long with a question on the tip of the tongue to be made. Tell me then, the author said, so tender and accentuating his head slightly toward you. Is this? The girl said, when I was little my father taught me to meditate, which I loved. I sat cross-legged, joined the palms of hands and closed his eyes, in my room before going to bed, and forgot everything he had done during the day. After beginning to see very bright lights, castles that seemed to float in the air, little elves and fairies, and those that come in animation films. And I loved to see those beings of light off, with only a small candle to light my room. You know, the girl continued. I considered it and sometimes fell asleep sitting up. But with time all these friends that visited me every night, began to fail to appear. Now try and find them inside my head and I cannot find. Sometimes I see them but disappear immediately, leaving me very sad because he spoke with them and played well. I asked my mother because my father before me musing separated from my mother for some time. My mother told me I was growing up, and as we grow these things no longer appear and forget us with her for my age. Again I asked him why this happens. She just shrugged and gave me a goodnight kiss, told me that the best was when they were sleeping. In the morning when you wake up I know the answer for myself. Only when you wake up still did not know the answer, and felt that it was not worth asking again because my mother, if she knew it, had responded to me the night before. Does the cruise I can explain why my friends I stopped coming. And I feel so lonely and I do not know who to ask more. A new, uniform silence reigned over the classroom, and for a few minutes just looking at the author. Besides the girl who had listened attentively, as well as with other colleagues and teachers who were also present, so that broke the utter silence that had hitherto remained, which was already beginning to make some more restless in their chairs. Well, said the author, looking over all. Feel that? A teacher asked, more curious. What? The author commented. Two important things have passed. The first was the absolute silence. The second was that the minds of you all stopped while there was silence. These are the exact answers to answer questions that girl in the blue dress. Said the author. The girl looked into his eyes and said, I already have the answer he wanted. Thanking lowered small eyes and drew a brief smile like it's the very happy to be herself. The curious teacher, raising his hand, exclaimed loudly, now I'm still worse than before. Asked why, the author. Apparently the girl understood, but I'm confused about what silence has to do with the fact that the girl back to find such imaginary friends. The author smiled and felt that teacher was far from a reality that is not seen but felt. And he said, the girl, like many here, do not get it. Just felt what happened. For those who want to understand, it becomes impossible to feel, and those who feel too, they do not think, for anyone not able to accommodate both symptoms at the same time, one or the other. So this is. And so I will answer those who felt rather than understood. The silence in which all stand for a few minutes, the silence is necessary in any meditation you do. The girl even try meditation in the silence of his room and unable to meet their friends, is the fact that it started to take better care what happens outside himself. How certain rules in excess, complements of times, the situation of the parents are separated, and the father is the person who was more knowledgeable in these things spiritual, and apparently has not helped to discern what goes with it, like the new material that has absorbed since he started school. Well then, by that I point out that the girl who used to live in communion with his elves and fairies, belonging to the plan or spiritual sidereal want to set, was forced to be removed by the imposition of these extreme requirements and record time in a very short, learning all that was new to her, and it is through the mind. In turn the mind, that is an almost perfect mechanism, started taking it, through what we call habits, tastes, thoughts, illusions and delusions. Then to get more and more to live on these determinios of mind, which controls the physical body rest, she increasingly unconsciously, that does not have time for everything, including itself at certain times, so necessary for their real mental and spiritual balance, will increasingly abandoning the practice of meditation, and increasingly living in the mind and the products it developed. So when it occasionally arises in meditation, instead of seeing everything that previously envisioned, because everything he had done throughout the day did not think, and thus had a mind free to wander through the spirit. Not so now. Because when she tries to meditate, your head is full of memories, actions and thoughts of things that have happened throughout the day. And she does not know how to ignore these thoughts, they will fill your head in time to meditate. The head is just as busy and having in mind everything that happened, and full of thoughts and other things, in most cases unnecessary screens into account. It turns out that their friends always continue to visit, to repair. It has a head full of thoughts that seem more dark clouds on rainy days. They are not as space inside the head of the girl are than the door of the head, as if it is a house waiting for the owner. They open the door to be admitted to talk and play. With this explanation it comes to the conclusion that the mind is not necessary to meditation as well as other things that happens in life. That's why you should keep everything the mind does and wants, whether it is necessary or not. If it is an illusion, is something that is created by the mind, that when it is not realized turns into disappointment. And you feel ill. So everything that comes from spirit and without the slightest shadow of doubt is real and remains forever and makes you feel good with yourself and with others. Now faces a situation that is more or less like this. How do you go away these dark clouds from inside the head, to make room for other more beautiful and known to make you feel good? Over time and the books I have written, as I have been giving lectures, I have always taken special care to warn people how you should relate to the mind. But once again I'll point out the best way to deal with it. The mind is known as a mechanism, is controlled on the orders of the soul by the spirit. The mind, in having the necessary orders to do what must be, then sends messages to the rest of the physical body, how to walk, talk, smell, eat, sleep, etc. Well, the mind is a mechanism that needs to evolve here on earth. This mechanism can be called so, never stop. But we departed to another life. The black clouds that appear in the mind are no more unwanted thoughts that we cannot send away anyway, because they are part of you. So how do? Will have to be ignored. Remember earlier when we were all silent for a minute? With a simple technique all eased your minds during this time. Because during that time have not uttered a single word. Minds simply slowed the most, waiting for something to be said. As you notice, they do not know to create, but would know what was going to say next. And this is not possible because the mind is nothing but an almost perfect mechanism. The same cannot be said of the spirit. Because through intuition or clairvoyance it has the ability to guess what will be said. So this is. When in meditation these dark clouds appear in the head, nothing should be done to remove them. Because the more they try to pull away, for longer they will stay inside your head. Let us consider the inside of your head is more like a television screen. So you do nothing and then always with his eyes closed, as he does that girl in the blue dress. You ignore everything that goes on inside of your television, just watch and nothing else, because these clouds like to be seen. And when they leave they feel observed and only just being seen and nothing more, without making judgments or think anything about them. They disappear to soft in the same way they appeared. Of course it is often not an overnight, because it also was not as they appeared. But with the practice of being alone or in company of your friends, real and not imaginary, as many call it but are not. Because if they were imaginary, had been made through the mind, and woe, and only in this way one could say that someone did not have the paralytic neat box spirituality in school. And yes, it was an illusion that led to the disease. Therefore it is quite normal to talk to these friends of light who have also been like you. and we now have the task of playing with you, and you respond to anything that does not remember, and always continue to help them whenever they need her help throughout your life. Thank you. Commented the author. Lesson 5th, The Human Aura. The ringing of the bell was heard out their call sign for guys to go to the playground. The teacher spoke up and said, "Boys, like we have here today a very special guest, and he does not care to continue to answer your questions, even during the break, and it seems you are excited about this. If you want to give up the range to keep, the author does not mind, do you?" "Of course not." From the bottom of the class said someone at the door. "But I'm hungry." And one girl said, "And I need to go to the bathroom to do kai that I am a male of the time." One of the teachers also commented, "Well, the best and make a short break to also go smoke a cigarette." During this short time the author was talking with some teachers who were surrounded by those students who gave up the range to hear and know something else that had to take so many doubts. Some of them continued to ask questions of the author, such as, "You can see my aura, and what color is it?" The answer that, "Yes. You have some very beautiful colors of aura. But just not going to say, because in time you will be yourself that will find and keep a secret for you." Another, "That's when I die, go to heaven?" "Of course you will," the author replied with a grin. But the classroom was filled again with arms in the air and fingers fully stretched. "Well, let's start," commented the writer. "Only that can lower your arms during the break because some of your colleagues put some questions you would like to explain them to you, because it is of vital interest to everyone before they begin to formulate more questions. So here goes. The first has to do with the aura. Are aware of what is or has ever heard speak on this?" Only a few said yes, while others shook their heads as a sign not so. Teachers were somewhat apprehensive but said nothing. The author went on. "One of your colleagues asked me something about the human aura, just waiting for you, said you all were all present. So this is all that is at the top are things of the earth, plants, trees, fish, birds, your dog or cat to take home as a pet, like all human beings have aura. What is the aura? By Chance has even written a book about this mystery. But I do not mind adding a little more than what it is. Everything that the human eye can reach and see, the aura is provided. The aura is an energy field that emerges from many apparently unnamed, as is the case of a rock or a human being. For now let's stick with the example of a rock, and everyone knows that already. The rock, as we know, is made of tiny particles of solid-state power, that in turn, when exposed to sunlight or any other the particles that are arranged in more compact form, reflecting its color to the outside of themselves. The color is such that gives the name of aura. As you know, the colors represent energy, and in case of a stone that can identify with a darker color around it has an aura of color dark due to the type of material of which it presents itself. You notice that the clearer the stone radiates more light color, as is the case of precious stones, those who, by way of example, we can find the rings. These stones are more crystalline state, they will notice that its intensity is higher and give more shining, such as silver or gold from other crystals. That is purer for any stone, the greater the intensity of light and color that stands out in your surroundings, and when they are in tune with your inner vision, these colors dazzle the can. Okay. It seems that everyone followed what he said. So let's now human auras, so much attention in many of you. Auras are no different from human stones, because as they are subject. But only physically, because like small pebbles have been part of a mountain, and then leave or leaving the man or the environment, as is the case of volcanoes. The human body, after giving by the end of their visit to Earth, begins to disintegrate, becoming two small pebbles, such as the bones of the skeleton. So far everything is equal. But from here is that there is now a big difference between what we call physical matter and that matter is astral or sidereal. For all that is matter is devoid of soul. But the human spirit and the soul are made precisely and only light, thinner and more refined than any diamond can reflect on Earth. That is, the soul is what we call the outer diamond plan. And this plan is a far superior plan that we live here on earth, a plan of positive energy which in turn is brighter than that which comes from the earth that is negative. Only dark and only the color appear next to the physical bodies and in the rocks. Then we have the energy or vibratory field that overlaps just above the physical body. In this vibratory field can also be called the etherico body or etrigo. And it is precisely here that enters the energy from the cosmos. That in turn to enter the field or vibrates and produces the vibration energy, this power to move this energy field that reaches the brain when he sends it to the physical body. And from there we have the energy to move in order to do our thing. Well, all that energy that circulates in the human body, as I said, comes from the cosmos, and that's where she comes back again after performing its function. How it is then returns to the cosmos. Just as entered. That is, energy entered by the various energy centers that we have arranged the entire human body. So this energy, after making its way around and fed the person, the same is released to the outside of the physical body through these energy centers. The biggest and best known are those people that fall in the following areas in the human body, and each of these energy wheels, these energy centers are smaller in the form of small wheels, sends out a very light and different from others. So the first of these wheels made of vibrating energy, are located in the feet, one on each foot. And its color is usually the darkest of all, presenting the most part brown, due to its proximity to the earth. We can say that it is the negative pole, which serves to drain the excess energy that often accumulates in the body. That's why people instinctively, when they are more nervous or strained, to walk barefoot on the sand or grass. Up from feet to head, we find the second, but the first major energy center. It is located in the pelvic area, or wherever the boys have the sex and the girls called pi. This center is where pelvic energy focuses most of the energy we have to spend to carry things or do heavier work requiring physical strength. It is also energy that passes through and is on that wheel, that boys and girls are made by the father and then growing in the womb of their mothers. The color is vivid red, which is the same color of blood when you are born. Then we have another large center in the area above the navel, more precisely 2 fingers under it, is called the wheel umbilical center. Reflects its orange color, and is one of the most important centers that people have. It is by him that is a more subtle energy, which is more or less thinner than in previous centers, and it is through this energy that you can make the decisions they want. Climbing further up the human body, we find another major energy center, located at about the so-called pit of the stomach. It is named solar center. As its name suggests, he identifies himself with the sun. He is absorbing most of the sunlight that keeps the physical body warm through the cells. As the sun has a yellow color. Then we have in each hand a small wheel energy, which can both receive sunlight as the center earlier, such as light can expel through the hand's palms. Many of you sometimes feel a slight tingling in the palms. This is due to a certain amount of energy being accumulated at the site. The colors you can get out of these centers are clear or white. It is also through these centers that people most developed in terms of energy can make use of this energy we call love to treat or cure people who are sick. We continue to climb the mountain of the human body. Just above the solar energy center is housed another major energy wheel. The more the wheel produces more energy, like all the other wheels. When they run very quickly, feel such colonies. This wheel is called heart energy, and which relates to the heart. It has a beautiful green color. And as you know, the color green is related to nature, and you love nature. In order to love nature must be through what the heart feels. So is this energy center to be close to the heart, that it captures the influences of the same, making you more loving, loves eats and more for those who have been dating. So this is the energy center of the passions and loves. We climbed a little more and find a wheel of energy. This besieges in the area of the throat and called the center of the larynx, and through it you can express. It is through communication. on earth can be through gestures or other actions as a way of giving to understand what they want, or through speech. Also when they want to communicate over power to the cosmos, as is also done through this center. Due to the strong influence it has with heaven, its color is the same of him. That is blue. Climbing this ladder a bit more of the human body, found in another rung up the center through which passes the energy with which we can see human auras and other small creatures of light, as the friends that the girl was to comment on the bit. On the most developed in terms of energy, they make use of this center or wheel power to guess what may be happening in the future. Many of you perhaps have heard the name of this center which we call the third eye, because this center is in the middle of the forehead just above the eyes. While the eyes look out, that this third view is more like an eye-shaped wheel also serves to look inward. Into the head can be seen in screen type, all the colors that exist in the universe as well as our souls. The color of energy due to the ability to reach beyond the blue of heaven and even go where the human eye cannot see is identified as indigo. We climbed some more and found an energy center 3 fingers above the third eye. It's called the angel center. For it is through him that people communicate privately with other beings of light in other more developed the higher planes of the cosmos. It is like a telephone line. When you want to know anything in particular, link from below through vibration of light to those more knowledgeable beings in the universe. The color of this center depends largely on the type of phone call you make. Now come the end of our climb. The last of the energy. The energy center located at the top of the head, better known as crown center, is one that brings people together to the cosmos, or God. So have the finest possible colors. What can be violet, white or pure crystal? Much depends on what people do or think. Its functionality allows you to send telepathic messages to other humans or animals. It was through this center at the beginning of mankind people communicate with each other, long before it was perfected speech. And yet over the millennia most people were lost due to abuse this appetite to know more things they should not. That is why today very few people can communicate telepathically. The higher animals, such as some domestics, still continue to communicate with them through this method. So to say we can also communicate with the animals and them must the same way. Very good. As I have been describing how the energy travels around the circuit and human becoming light later on, as they have realized. It is this same light after being externalized through the various energy centers and after passing through the pores of the skin, already carrying everything the body does not need more, then the note is called sweat or perspiration. This sweat is a telescope is seen full of substances that are harmful to the maintenance of the human body. Hence one can see that these bacteria meticulously previously used and which come to the surface of the pore, also bring liquids from the energy centers, which have a positive temperature as they rise into contact with the atmosphere. Type a pan that is on the stove with hot water so that when we lift the lid when the steam rises. The same happens with these fluids, with each color representing the wheel energy and so that makes up the human aura and animals. Aura is the identity of any person, animal or thing. Because through it and more precisely in humans where the technique is more developed, it is possible for those who are qualified and available to it, showing the colors on the auric energy centers and determine physical health problems, mental or spiritual. And then leave for treatment or cure. Usually people like to know your auric colors or others. But this is only possible to see why someone well experienced and without malice, if not so it does not work. As it represents only the higher centers in the area of the head, because it is short. Because if it was for the rest of the body a person will have to undress completely, as when going to the doctor. Back to area head. Many of the vapors that rise up to be released through the pores, its colors will come together in the area of the face and head. So it is from this point that it can identify whether the person has done good deeds or not, so if you have any serious illness or have done in less truth. So when all colors come together in this area then gives the identification of what the person is. It is then the union of all these colors, some more dense or pure than the other, we call the human aura. Many of you may already have been to churches or seen in paintings of saints edge of a certain specific color around the head or on top of it. This was the way that painters and artists met to identify the Holy Ghost or the purity of his soul. They realized all? Said the author. Lesson 6. When I live go to heaven. All remained silent and the author continued. Another question that boy did that during the break. Was it? When he left would go to heaven. Of course, going to heaven, replied the author. We're all going to heaven. When the physical body stops functioning, the spirit rises to the plan in the form of sidereal light. Many of you think that if they do this or that wrong done to this or that friend, when you leave this physical plane for astral, go to hell, and the devil has to find a bad guy and a very large horns, and put them to roast in hell. But have no fear of such fairy tales, because none of this is real. The only hell that exists is on earth. Consider this as follows. When any one of you feels good about himself, in perfect harmony with everything and everyone. In short, it feels as if the so-called heaven. But if there is someone who abuses, you have to do anyway to get it out of the earlier time when he was in communion with the whole universe, and thus felt what we call happiness, was interrupted by another person, doing it out of this state, going to feel so bad and hurt and suffering. Now that's what is called hell. But this only happens on the ground plane, where most human beings find themselves above their fellows, harming them, torturing them, or even killing them. For these beings suffered most without asking the living on earth. It shall cease to be as good as before, to become a hell. When it leaves the physical body forever, the spirit rises through the silver cord to the core, which then, by inserting into the same part of the silver cord through vibration, which united him even before the physical body. Thereafter there will be no connection to the earth and its previous body that held up to a certain height and determined spirit. When the spirit engages fully with the soul in the astral plane, just as the soul is also transformed into light, and it is this light that body and soul together are waiting for a new reincarnation to return to earth to start a new cycle of existence. However, there is no trial by God or the devil about what the person did poorly or less well in its previous life. It just happens that in the sidereal plan, where this is in soul light, you can see in retrospect the whole form of their previous experience. And before that identifies it as not having been done in the best way, the spirit in turn, becoming aware of this without any pain, but one can only feel regret for something that should have done well, and did not. From the moment you become aware of it, commits himself to a future reincarnation on earth, correct what in a previous life he did not. So that boy, do not be afraid of anything, because the real hell is what you can spend on earth is an act done by us or the other. Because when we had a new birth in sidereal plan, only and last in total peace, harmony with all the worlds, and remains in a state of light in the absence of pain in this way, hatred or any other kind of wickedness. Did felt this, I said, comment to the author. Some of them swung their heads in mention that yes, while the others remained attentive to explanations. Lesson 7th. Psychologist or veterinary. The old and well-used part of pure black slate, and showed the scar's deeper chalk when he was pressed too much, or if parts so accidentally leaving visible traces and whitish spots, which contains many stories over many decades. Who wrote it? It was a real witness of much wisdom. Both teachers and students through it solved many problems and took lots of questions. This picture, black as coal, that lay along the shores of the author, began to be kissed by a small ray of sun that penetrated through a window, bringing out certain colors of chalk, worn out but passed unnoticed by the normal view, and also denoting spent more in other areas, more pinkish tones. After noticing these colors, the author turned to the class, and there were some fingers in the air. And the next invited to put their question, which happens to have a girl, was with an air of binding certain personality more developed for his age, and exposed in the following way: your question. You know, like to study to be a psychologist to help others. But I also have a certain affection and attraction for animals. So also have been thinking a lot about the subject in future to be a veterinarian. But I know that I can only choose a profession, and when I think about the subject of which is that I choose, I cannot reach a conclusion. Because I hear different voices in my head that tell me that I must be a psychologist, while others advise me to be a veterinarian. And then at times I think I have chosen this more later and I already regret. Will Cruz, I can explain how I can overcome this indecision that really disturbs me the many times I even awake at night? Sure, retorted the writer with a humble smile. You know what makes you indecisive is nothing more than your way of thinking. Preempting a decision has not yet reached the height of take. So you think, being the result of studies in which you should go before the time comes, your mind will increasingly taking care of you. And you must learn that the mind cannot be trusted. And I'll give you one small example. Do you like ice cream? Yes, the girl said with enthusiasm. So tell me to that you like more? Yum. One is chocolate and the other is vanilla. Well, let's say so to have these examples about these so much like ice cream as follows. When you feel like eating any of them, think before you buy either which is that you feel like more. But do not go right away and you will buy it thinking, for example, in chocolate. When you get there you'll delight in it. And during all this time before buying either you keep thinking about it. However, it is time that you will buy and get to the store, and when you go to ask for the chocolate, that the whole time you walk before you to think at the last second before you order seedlings before and prefer the idea of vanilla. You should already have happened? Yes. Well, as you can confirm a time when the mind thinks in a certain way about something and the next moment you think about it another way, ever confuse you more. So she is not relying. This is one of the voices you hear inside your head that does not get you to decide how it should be. Nothing, so no one should keep in mind. The other voice you hear is the voice of conscience. This and only this voice is that you should consider is a real conviction of what you should choose. But how do I know which one is it? Asked the girl, immediately giving no chance to explain before the author. Will you do the following? Looking for a quiet place where you can be completely alone, relax to the max, close your eyes for a moment or the time required, and do ask the question to yourself about what you would like to be. Then you focus on you and think about you want to be a psychologist, continuing with his eyes closed and without noise, and thou must have a sense whatsoever. Then remember that sensation makes you feel good or bad. Following the same way the question to you to come up to be a veterinarian, and then thou must re-experience a different feeling than the first. After analyzing the two feelings you had, and you will notice that one is quite different from each other. While one makes you feel less of yourself and the other a greater sense of well-being. And it is about that you can trust to last forever, because she does not stick and comes from your conscience and not your mind. Got it? Yes, the girl said with a grin that betrayed not know yet how far this part of life. Lesson 8: The loft badly tidy. A little sparrow hopping on the ledge outside the window looking for small crumbs of bread or cake that some boys will be leaving during breaks, nibbling here and there, sometimes lowering his head to eat, now rising in the sign of mistrust by any beak, until after a while began to penetrate her look through what was going on inside the classroom. Saw some of them in the air, fingers slightly more raised than the others. It was a frowning boy who ran the word in question to the author in the following way. Cruz. I am 9 years old and already a lot of time my parents walk me a psychologist, but I do not like anything to go there, but they force me and I have to go there. The doctor tells me that my body is like a house that starts in the feet and ends at the head, and that this house is very big and beautiful. He says his feet are the foundation to support the entire weight of the house. And the space between the feet and head are the rooms, and has room tidy. But he says his head is no longer the same. He says that the head is the attic of the whole body, and all that is left over or more rooms or other rooms in the attic will stop. And since I cannot fix these things, he tells me how to do to get in the right places. I know I have everything neat because I am equal to my colleagues here in the class, and that I am one of the highest marks. But every time I go to the doctor and I feel bad, every time I hate to go there anymore, and then my parents forced me to take some pills that say it is quieter to walk and sleep better. Do you can tell me something about this?" The author left frowned and made a slight grimace, sending in a soft smile to the boy. "Sure I can," said the author. "That's why I was invited to come to this school, to answer these types of things or others who want to place. Let's begin this explanation. You know your parents want the best for you, but do not have much time for what I feel to share with you, possibly due to both work and the little time we have to deal with you is just, although they want it more. Because of this lack of time to spend with you to hear what you have to talk to them, and not speak to, this desire to speak more and more will be higher, like a balloon that got inside one of these rooms in your body, which will filling the air as this will increasingly filling the balloon reaches a height that it must begin to burst. That's why they give you the tablets, so that the balloon does not burst." When the boy says, "But I do not want to take the pills which often give me vomiting," the author, "And thank goodness, because that is the sign that your body gives you that do not need them for anything. Only your parents do not spend much time with you will increasingly failing to know how your attic is to fix, and then go to the doctor to help you get it. Spirituality in school, when they should be to take some more extra time to be with you to realize that you are a normal boy, just needs more attention from them. So you have to convince them, or you want to be able to talk with them explaining them everything I'm saying. The symptom that leads you to feel more active is only due to the accumulation of energy in the body, as you said will fill the balloon. But you who are very intelligent, well, you can control this energy when you feel tenser by blowing air forcefully through the mouth as far as thou canst better. And then turns to breathe new air in through your nose, you'll see that calm you down. If your parents force you to continue taking these tablets, pretend that you swallow and throws them out when possible. However, studies and plays the most, and stay busy to spend all this energy that your body creates and requires that your parents give you more time and attention. Talk with them and tell them calmly that you feel in you what you will see that failed to take you to a psychologist. You know everything that young as you should learn from their elders, in this case your parents. Not always, sometimes they are the newest, must learn for themselves the most appropriate way to teach their elders. You love stories, do not you? Yes, replied the boy, so I'll tell you what happened to me. When I was your age I was in school to learn to read and write. But my mother did not know. And so to the extent that he learned in school, so my mother was teaching to read and write. As you can see, this was a brief example of how parents can teach children. You will only have patience as I had and see where they need your help. Search right inside them many questions and not make them, not suspecting that you are want to help, to develop a new understanding between you. Note, they built your house from top to toe, as the psychologist said, although she is new, needs to be painted and decorated to the attic that you haven't tidy, as are the restrooms, bedrooms, and even the balcony side out where you can see this huge stern hair. Okay. And the little man nodded yes, through a slight swing forward with the little head like hair did stand out above the forehead. That more resembled a visor cap to the Sunday. Lesson 9th, Fairies and Gnomes. A trembling hand with the forefinger stretched half belonged to a girl with curly hair the color of gold, which is well designed, with a smile on your little face, light skin which resembled the color of face powder, which some ladies of ancient times wore to hide a few wrinkles, and facial gospel. Cruz has several times spoken of friends with whom we often play with eyes closed before sleep or upon waking. I have spoken it with my parents, but they tell me they do not believe this. Can you talk more of them, what they are made and why they are so quick and so have those funny ways, and come to us, but more and more I see of leaving. The writer smiled so contemplative that the girl had said, "Well, come to this question that intrigues you, and you younger to older, as is the case of some of your parents and teachers here, do not believe. So that's how things exist in absolute reality. And by the adults will begin precisely because one day you also shall be. Some adults lose faith in these forms they call things, because they begin to live much longer than they should, in thought and the things that it produces. So will swapping old relationships they had with these beings with new patterns of thoughts, which in turn will create a new state to stop feeling and come to believe only in what may have in the physical. This will mean that failing to believe what guided him since he was born, it was that his spirit showed him, and as you could see with my eyes closed, to pass only believe what their eyes see, and later many of these older only come to believe in what they can get her hands on. This means that the adult has begun to focus more of what they began to move in mind, going to ignore these beings that are only possible to see through the human spirit and not the time to communicate with them. Due to this lack of communication begins to overlook them and forget them as no longer believe them. About what they are made. Asked the author, does anyone know? Silence returned to completely invade the room that was once broken by the soft voice of the author. The gays are made of light, just light and nothing else. The real story is this. These friends that many call the fairy godmothers, gnomes, angels with goose-like wings on his back, lights are nothing but the purest color. Before you were born so were all of you like them, and with whom you have played, they were all made in the same light that moved by vibrations. Then when you were born through your parents here on earth, continued on the same playing with them, that's why they spent most of the time sleeping, and only saw lights moving from one place to another or engaging with you in physical form asking you to smile, even without having your eyes open. This is due to bring a smile to the energy that these lights are more dense, which becomes the vibration that you achieve, make a gentle vibration in the body type that makes you smile, tickle and laugh later. As you begin when babies are still going and after opening his eyes, and starting to see the first pictures of your parents or others, your mind that is still very cloudy, so kind as in fog, barely see a foot ahead of the nose, you began to mix these figures of people and things in your unconscious. That as they arrive until the age that you have, continue to see these mixtures of colors from which you came, that came denser color images of the faces of people. So these friends are made of light and it can often take up human forms, animals or other things. Just depends on your creative imagination. Why did they come to have with you? They do not come to you, and they always remain throughout life at your side, you and that as they grow older, many of you fail to see them. Why will henceforth ignore? But every once in a while they will repair it for no reason and you can without knowing why, even laugh at themselves or just smile at yourself. These are friends who may feel at such times as they give their signal and want to continue to play, as when they were very small or even before they were born. About how fast they move, is due to be light and as you know the light is very fast, so these lights are brighter and more reached up speed, in what is called speed of light, because they are very light and pure and free as you ever were and will be returned when the change of plan. Spirituality in school. Lesson 10th. The trees have heart. A little finger swayed in the air in front of the writer on a lower plane, which raised almost a boy with blue eyes to look meek and mild, with air turnuranto, implying that an important question had to do. The author looked at him and did not need to say more, because the question then catapulted through their labia minor. Can you tell me if the trees have hearts? The writer looked at him and let escape a slight smile. More or less, answer immediately. The trees as you have physical bodies and to some extent to have a heart but not many. The author turned and reached over and immediately grabbed the eraser. It was customary to clean the chalkboards after taking note of the exercises. And it took him up in the air and turning the handle part of it was made of wood showed it to everyone. You see this eraser has sat on a tree and right here in the middle as you can see is that these lines are called veins, which when the tree is cut out leaving a liquid called resin, these veins that we call as we all have spread throughout our bodies. That is why when you cut a branch of a tree also feel pain, as if we cut an arm any one of us. And your blood is the resin that it springs out as a sign of suffering. Now repair right here in the middle of the eraser so often that you have already caught and maybe not even notice this small point here is that most bloody in the middle. This point is in what they call the knot of wood, and come to him many shafts as you can see. As in your hearts that the larger veins called arteries, they also carry the blood. Here is a tree resin through the wood grain, which in turn go right to the node, so to say in comparison with the human body. Can also be said to have a heart, but several, because they will notice a large board that she usually has many nodes. But I feel that not only put your question about what I said. Want to know more, if the tree is said to have veins, blood and body which is the wood and skin as well, which we call the shell which protects the perpetrators of the most if they also feel as we feel many things through the heart. Is it? Suggested the author. Yes, it is also, the little boy replied. So here goes. Besides the already mentioned little about what makes up a tree, repair themselves better in terms of structure it is like you in many ways, but I leave you for you to discover for yourselves later, and if you want your teachers and adopt, they may develop a work about it. Do not linger over the other party, and we also very interesting is that the feelings that a tree can have as any of us. What I described was already proven a lot of time and often by many scientists who are engaged in studying nature and its various symptoms. And then we take the example of the trees, whatever they are. These same scientists put several wires to embrace a tree without hurting, and then link these wires to a device that enables the measurement of vibration. After having done so, turned on the phone and someone was coming out of that tree to a stop next to it. The dial indicate a gauge, nothing accused. Then that person hugged the tree and displays an accused gentle vibration that remained stable. Then they did the experiment with a logger who took an axe in hand with the intention of cutting. Woe to the pointer of the display seems to want to leave within the unit due to the strong negative vibrations that sent him flying. Well, the tree need not be sacrificed for scientists to come to the conclusion that ultimately the tree divined the evil that would make him the woodsman. Just do not come to the conclusion why this happened. But I cannot explain why I am a scientist in this area, but as they understood. Not being a scientist, I do not think that aspect, but I can feel the sensation of fear that the tree felt this way. The trees are as we possess physical bodies. They wood and we flesh and blood, and notice that the tree felt the vibration through the good hug the person who gave it, and then he returned it with a sense of welfare. Great. If you want to stop after school, can address those trees that are in the playground and do the test, you will see that without thinking feel the vibration and then feel more happy and relaxed. Because it is so, the trees do not come but they feel when they are feeling good or bad. If he had the woodcutter evil thoughts to her. By having bad thoughts it generates a negative vibration in your body, what we might call less good, and the tree feel this vibration as when any one of you can embrace without malice, but if the logger or an arsonist who you want to get fire, she feels that vibration coming from the body as negative people, and gets scared and starts to vibrate as happens when you get scared, and thus also trigger a higher vibration or are trembling in fear. That's what she feels, and that can be tested by the scientists of the technical gizmos, but not by describing them but by others, those whom we call the spirit scientists. Because these things related to whether the hearts of trees, animals or humans, can only be analyzed through the spirit, like when you hug a tree, do not need any contraption to feel the good vibes that you send the tree. If they are good boys, but make it feel bad as others. And you do not want that, do you? No answer. Some boys and girls through fogging. So that to be nice to have a strong heart likes you. Lesson 11th, Colorful Dreams and Nightmares. The one farthest corners of the classroom stood a boy, embarrassed air so quickly that it decided to put the arm in the air for dexterity, or simply picked up by the might feel uncomfortable with the question wished to put forward to the class. And teachers of other classes who were there to attend with their students, though that room were not being usual. The writer looked at him briefly and gave him the consent of the word, a gesture by gesture. When the boy a little huskily said, I would like if possible I explained why I sleep at night when I have dreams that I like very cute enough. And at other times according to the middle of the night to shake until I seems to fall into a deep hole and I'm afraid. Why cannot I always have dreams that taste just as much? The author assessed the entire Odyssey and in the end thanked the boy. So this is. Commented the author. Let's start then by dreams that you both like and its meaning. During the day you do many things. When they reach the end, many of them do not remember who made them. But for example, there was something you liked to have done and did not, maybe go visit a friend. But they were not put your mind the memory in your subconscious, because you took the note several times that thought and not screened. So when you fall asleep your subconscious starts to work and then projected into the mind the picture of your friend that you want to visit. But attention is what we call a dream, have dark colors, and hardly able to identify your friend. That's what you might call a dream. Because the mind offers everything you desire, as did the action to visit your friend by your feet when you are awake, the mind gives you this visit so illusory as if you were there. And they will notice that besides the images in dreams are dark colors, is also almost trembling, often cannot identify whatever it is. Many of you when you dream of something, for example like to have and have not, when this dream after waking believe that this will take place. But only by chance that this can happen is one chance in 1,000 that happen. Therefore is disillusionment of dreams, because they say nothing, just repeat what you thought about and agreed not materialize. And you will notice that when you have these darkest dreams when you wake up normally feel somewhat bad mood or confused, and hardly remember what happened. The boy who put the questions raised his hand to speak, saying, "But I also have colorful dreams which taste great and feel good." Agreement. It's been going. Commented the author. Now we move to what many people call nightmares. You fall asleep after your spirit leaves your physical body, as if it were a shell that opened to let out. Then there is a silver cord that connects the shell to the astral world. And this is the cord that more can resemble that which they were born, kept them connected to your mothers, which as you know is called umbilical cord. It is very similar to this, and also connects through the navel to the astral shell. And it is through this spirit that the cord leaves the shell, going to project into the cosmic world. And when the spirit world is very different from that in which we live physically. If the shell is shaken for any reason or if you are afraid of something in the astral world, your spirit wants to return so quickly so that he comes by the silver cord to a much higher rate than that which is used to get down to the shell, and when it re-enters because at that speed until it shakes. And immediately agree with the feeling they would fall into a bottomless pit. So this is just feeling deep down through the spirit of the silver cord faster than usual. But if you do not have someone to wake up to be afraid, your spirit descends and quietly re-enters the body without the discomfort. Now let's call the colorful dreams that make you feel so good, when they were little more than maybe some of you were to wet their bed. But that was a thing of the past, is not? The guys much were as little embarrassed. I said nothing, many of them dropped their heads looking to the side. What we call dreams colorful has nothing to do with dreams or nightmares, which we have identified and how they are formed. Has anyone here ever heard of or know what astral travel is? I've heard about it, but as adults no matter was I to know, said a girl with the beautiful red patent leather shoes. Come then, said the author. When I spoke recently about the dream and gave the example of going to visit a friend and was not, but thought to go. And there is no night you appeared in a dream then something like your friend. So let us take as an example the way that friend who could not visit. And as before falling asleep so fond of your friend wanted to visit, the last thoughts were of him, and slept through. As a wish your heart go on the visit, your spirit, took note of this, and then the shell opens as I explained before leaving for the spirit, and it rises through the silver cord to the astral world. And that world is composed of all colors and brightness that you cannot find them on earth. In this plan you will also find your friend if he is sleeping like you. You can talk, play and do all they can do here on earth. Then say goodbye and return to your shell. And when you wake up, remember exactly everything that happened in the astral plane. Then done, said, and tints more refined than those we find in this physical world, and feel quite happy and longing to go back, or feel that they never went away. Astral travel. They saw the differences? Yes, someone said. Lesson 12th, The Girl and the Puppy. The middle of the room, a girl and a thin face with a sad, ask the following question to the writer. I had a dog which he loved me too, and we played a lot with each other, but one day when crossing the road was hit and died. But as I liked it so much, sometimes when I sleep I still think it, and it looks like and see who is still alive. But then when I wake up no longer see him more, but it seems I've been playing with it. Can you explain this, please? Yes, replied the writer. Your puppy just went into another plan, failing to live on Earth. But he is still alive and relates to you in what is called the astral plane, where upon the earth from his spirit he became only the light, and so both you and he can find in this plan, where a physical body or his death can never achieve. So when you play, just do it in the plan. It is through your spirit in the light that travels to the plan, due to the manifestation of the bonds of friendship that you have created on Earth. And as you should have noticed that when they meet and play, your body has no physical damage occurred during the accident, which he left, but in perfect health, as if nothing had happened to. This happens because of this plan will not all be light, which can present this case as a form of light, your body. And so it is not only light is defective at all, and thou must have noticed that colors much more beautiful, bright and pure about him when he moves. This is the astral plane, where you can find only when you sleep, or if you manage to do a little meditation, or you stay focused on you, and you design the plan of this existence, you communicate with him. I feel your disappointment after waking up and not the view more. This is because physical return to the world, he and this other plan no longer exists as matter, but that can sometimes manifest their presence only in terms of light only, and only exists on the astral plane of light as you described. So do not be sad that he still continues to exist, while the visit to this plan of light. Lesson 13th, The Spirituality. One boy apprehensive that scratched her head and again asked the following. What is spirituality and what it represents? The author continued to feed him a slight smile that shone through the eyes, or not, that was your state of mind the whole time. Looking at all those present began the explanation, now making clear that slight smile to the faces. Spirituality is all that somehow involves the existence of any human being, and in particular what the report calls the spirit, the things that many people give the name of holy. Now I will give you an example of features that directly involves the human being or a person in you with spirituality. As you all know, any human being is composed of a matter we call the physical body. This physical body that we consider as a vast and perfect human mechanism, which is controlled by the mind, for your maintenance needs of food, either through air or food, without which the body could not keep. This is the practice that most people got used to develop, feed themselves physically only to live physically. Except that in order to live on Earth needs something else that commands higher mind, and in turn the physical body. This something higher is that which emanates from the universe, which is light, and that after going through the spirit to continue in the same way in light, then descends to the plane of existence on Earth, eventually reaching the physical body, and the feeding of light spiritual, so called because it passed by the spirit. These two types of food, physical and spiritual, are the ones that permeate the existence of any human being on Earth. Now I shall explain how that feeds the light spiritual human being. As you know, to run or jump or study, it is necessary that you consume foods to meals. These are only to feed the physical body to where these, they have during the day, in physical terms, so far fuel the physical. They feel a full stomach and strength to perform all the tasks that need doing. Only to continue to do these tasks will require a different kind of energy, more subtle, i.e. into account, more or less fine, whether superior, then is this light coming from the cosmos that hits you in your physical body through the pituitary gland and that after such triggers certain vibration which will then make the call digestion of food. So by that time as in other more diverse as this spiritual light feeds the physical body. Because without that light turned into energy would not be possible digestion, as they could not carry out your tasks. Now, as I had given you a brief example can serve as the spiritual light in each one of you, I shall conclude and direct response to your question in general terms, and that everyone can understand more easily, which is the spirituality that surrounds and determines all human life. Spirituality in school. Thus everything that involves love or things of the heart, we feel what is going in someone's heart, the humility to us, or we help others without demanding anything in return, feel or do to others what we like they do to us, or even just feel that when you light touches, as a good relationship with the animals or the whole of nature in general, taking it all to feel, as part of each one of you. For all that you exemplify, and more could be said for that party would not fit in this class time, are just some ways to be a spiritual person, and therefore to live in accord with this, it is a spiritual person. Now if we join it all explained to you, and when practiced, is that it gives the name of spirituality. Lesson 14. The White Gloves. Lunchtime was beginning to be felt in the stomachs of some children. A slight whisper of a lack of food could shine some nervousness abroad. The canteen could be dazzled by the window panes in the same room where a little off also fit the school. At some point very carefully to be small four-legged sidewalks with white gloves and black suit, very carefully pierced the fence and headed to the nearby canteen. The author observed the utter magnificence of his being in his gestures, as well as some boys and teachers present. One of the boys said, "It is our cat White Gloves that often play on the playground with us and always give them something of our snacks, and also waiting for us at the door of the canteen to give him something more after lunch." The writer went on to observe, White Gloves, as well as the aura. And he said, "Today will be different. Instead of being as usual waiting for you at the door of the canteen, he will now wait for you at the door of the classroom, as will testify." One of these teachers, so incredulous, raised his hand and said, "Sorry, but I can't really believe that he come here, because Mrs. Continuous always ran away with him with the broom, and a lot of time since he never came so close." The writer smiled and replied, "But today is different, and proof of this is that if they allow you to open the room door, and he will come to us, and do not worry about Miss Continuous that it will let you enter, but only just today, and the future will never drive away, leaving him waiting for you to stay in the room but the door outside. He would never enter into a sign of respect." "Good," said a girl more excited with such detail. The teacher, who was customary to give lessons in this room, said, "How is this possible? I do not believe it." The author replied that immediately calmly. The first thing that anyone should take into account so that something positive happens, is to believe in herself. And then externalize this accreditation to something or someone, because the power of accreditation or faith, there is an enormous power to change certain physical concepts. We all have tremendous inner capacity that most of the time if you forget or are simply unaware of. As people throughout the ages have fallen into disrepute on themselves, as well as others, and taking refuge in what the mind rationalizes, they have become accustomed to believe in something or someone that can make them. It must be seen visibly or through the personal touch. Then apply the old adage here to see to believe. So in this case we will apply this saying to calm some minds that are out there to curl. Opening the door and invites the exceptionally white gloves to appear. What do you think? Spirituality in school. The guys excited about this invitation, replied in chorus, "But this time is awesome." Yes. The author looked at the teachers and especially the director of the school, who was also present, which nodded to open the door to such requests. Lesson 15. The Telepathic Cat. The door opened, letting in rays of sun lighting the way through the lobby. A boy with the finger told the author, I believe, white gloves will come to us, but I wish they explained how that happens, and what makes you come here." Among some looks of disbelief and hope other students and others, to see whether that animal was showing signs of submission, the author responded to the question put to him that the boy. "You know, all beings have an energy field that we call the magnetic field, that is made of energy that leaves the physical body. This energy can be identified and seen by some people around these physical bodies. As already described in the explanation I gave about auras. And then when one be trained and developed that can sense and identify other being through these auric colors, find out who he really is, and thus is whether he has good instincts or not. After such a being, if you want to communicate with another without using the words, you can do through telepathic waves, which are more or less like radio waves. Vibrations, so to communicate or send a message to another being, called by telepathic means, it is through these waves of energy. Who wants to send such a message to another is near or far, is in sight or not, that will flow channel through which this vibration must be completely clear. This is without any thought. Just feel it should send such a message, she will go directly to one another being, which also need to have the channel open to receive and to be able to identify. Maybe you've heard mention that brains work in cycles, and these brain cycles, which emit these waves of energy. So when we send the message, after feeling that the other brain cycles have to be your brain to work, send the message. If who will receive the message has a higher cycle of the sender, the sending will be to increase its own cycle of the brain, the same level that they will receive. How can the reverse happen? Eye watching? The most became so. And at that very moment the S continuous leaned against the wall of the hall to allow a cat of white gloves. After arriving at the door and look at it, I was amazed at the disregard of the animal to enter quietly in the room class, faced with this rather unique hitherto the most incredulous, bulging eyes, witnessing that every step, gave white gloves carefully observing all the details before putting the next foot forward. As if to count the steps that led, slowly walked the aisle of the room as if a king if it is, and what was at the time, being admired by all eyes present. Sometimes held up a little here and there when someone handed him a hand so loving. But back then always in front of the head and tail rose in the air. It was increasingly nullifying the distance that separated him from the author, until he came to his feet and sat down in front of you viewing it in the colors of your aura. Because it is through this kind of higher animals in terms telepathic also identify who people are, and only after such identification are pleased to manifest in a relationship with them. If not, or neither appear, or there is just to get some doubts cleared, and then turn around and go away. If they identify with the person or another animal, are close by interlocking and rubbing the legs or leaving or going to get into her lap. The white gloves, after identifying completely and in detail, who had asked him gently to appear in the room, stood up and rubbed so cordial on the author's legs, looking up toward the giant that was compared to him, feel love, and looking so he closed his eyes and bowed his head. The author realized that he also demanded his share, which was no longer some affection. Given this is making you feel parties in the head and taking him in her arms as if stroking of old friends if we treated, but without ever having seen before. After a few moments, and before some of these open mouths, the writer returned to put down. By that, white gloves, threw a last look and pulling in the same way that had come before the bewildered look of some still went out the door sitting on a step lower in space as the playground, waiting for the departure of children. Lesson 16th. The teacher asleep. A boy put this question. You can explain why at certain times when we are in the classroom doing our work silently and our teacher closes his eyes and has features that you are smiling and happy with her? The writer once again threw a smile at the boy as much as the teacher of the same. He explained. You know, when people reach a certain spiritual development and determined without knowing it, they have certain symptoms and certain reflexes, attitudes or features. What can be identified by outsiders themselves. So when your teacher closes his eyes, just close them to the outside, i.e. in this case for you. But it remains open with them in mind. And your mind is similar to a television screen, it gives real images of cosmic light, bearing his spirit to roam these images or lights. As your spirit during these trips is to observe or to contemplate these images of light, he feels them as usual. And as I explained earlier how you remember, light is the same energy, and the same is what makes the images as in cartoons. These lights are often transformed into an energy. Images are already shaped by the spirit, which vibrates when you feel it, then that is identified by the physical body. The physical body to identify this vibration energy, which is an energy of love, because the teacher of your heart be pure and have no evil, this whole set of feelings is felt by the body as a more subtle vibration. That will then trigger the smile that is just the physical vibration that you identify with a smile on their faces. That smile is a sign that your teacher is in line with what we call holy. But anyway, she never gave the feeling of being in the room with you. Because due to years teaching, and why she feels and enjoys it, the act of staying in the room or teaching you, possibly even without her knowledge, has become an often act as a lesson, not given by your mind but by his spirit. But the gong sounded for lunch break. After everyone thanked and dismissed the writer, and went up neatly and out of the room to the outside, where the white gloves stood waiting for his friends to accompany them to the canteen, this place that after lunch the boys to leave give him any little thing that had kept him for lunch, and that it takes to keep the friendship he had with them, all for play later. Spirituality in school.